University of Southern California and a BS in Fire Protection Engineering from the University of Maryland. Mr. Daly has over 30 years of experience in fire and life safety services.
Good morning. This is Tom Daly, Hospitality Security Consulting Group. Welcome to the seminar. I'm going to go over some of the regulatory issues with respect to carbon monoxide and the requirements for hotels as they exist today, and it is a changing environment. And there's contact information at our website on the slide in front of you, and please feel free to call or email me if you need further assistance. Get down to the next slide. This is a technical and regulatory information presentation, not intended to be legal advice. First, the International Fire Code, for the very first time in 2012, instituted requirements for carbon monoxide alarms within hotels and other types of buildings. The importance is that 44 states adopted the International Fire Code as the basis for their state code, county code, or city code. What's in the International Fire Code is important. There are probably about a dozen to 20 states that have some form of CO regulation already on the books in various parts of their code, so it is a complicated process. If you're in a state like Massachusetts or New Jersey who's had this on the books for a decade or so, you're probably already in compliance, but if you're in a state that is just getting into this matter, checking your local code and state code is very important. There's a list of states that have adopted 2012 IFC, some with delays, some with deletions, as you can see on the slide. The difference between the 2012 code is and the 2015 code, which was just released in June, is the 2012 code requires CO alarms within all guest rooms or alternately a CO detection system in all common areas. That is a bit of overkill, and ironically, the 2012 code does not require a CO alarm in a room with a fuel-fired appliance, which is the potential source of CO. So over the past 3 years, a group of experts has worked to modify the 2012 code and has now finalized that process. And the 2015 IFC only requires CO alarms in rooms with fuel-fired appliances or rooms adjacent to unventilated garages. So for a hotel, it's fairly a small number of rooms: kitchen, boiler room, generator room, pool heater room, rooms with fireplaces. So you're probably looking at anywhere between 5 and 10 CO alarms in a standard 300-room hotel, for example. We've done this in my previous role as Vice President of Loss Prevention for Hilton. We did this in both Massachusetts and New Jersey, and we averaged about 7 or 8 CO alarms per hotel, so not a terrifically difficult or expensive proposition. I think the important thing for the industry is to look at what's coming. Just this past Friday, North Carolina, which had previously adopted the 2012 International Fire Code, changed and directed their regulatory body to adopt the 2015 language just for CO alarms, not the entire 2015 code. So North Carolina will be doing this over the next about 7 months, and it will affect both new and existing hotels in North Carolina by June of next year. So there is that retroactive requirement, but again, it's a handful of CO alarms. California, by virtue of a bill passed 2 years ago, will begin to consider the same issue, that is, adopting the 2015 language and implementing that effective January 1st of 2016. So about 16 months from now. Again, it will be a retroactive requirement for existing hotels, but again, when the final language gets done, we believe it will just affect those small number of rooms in a hotel with a fuel-fired appliance. For other states, we believe that the state hotel associations need to be proactive with their legislatures or regulators if they are in the consideration process for adopting the 2012 codes, because clearly that language is inappropriate, and the ICC has fixed that with the 2015 language. If your state is already one that has adopted the 2012 codes, there's nothing to preclude a state hotel association for filing a petition for a rule change. And given the success we've had in North Carolina, that would be a model to point to. So with that, I'm going to pass the ball here to Byron Breezy with Rolf Jensen and Associates, the fire protection consultant for AHLA, and that will take me a second, so hold 1 minute. And here we go.
Thanks, Tom. Hope everyone can hear you.
Thank you, Tom. I'm sorry, let me just introduce you here real quick, Byron. Thank you, Tom, for your presentation. Our next speaker is Byron Breezy. Mr. Breezy is a licensed professional engineer and SVP for Rolf Jensen and Associates. He has over 25 years of experience from vertical markets and commercial consulting fire protection projects within the hospitality industry. He completed numerous projects with Starwood Hotels and Resorts, Hyatt Hotels, and Hilton Worldwide. He holds an MBA from Marymount University and a BS in Fire Protection Engineering from the University of Maryland. Thank you, man. Go ahead.
Thanks, Tony. I appreciate the invitation to be part of this panel today. My portion is to cover how you accomplish the regulations, and as Tom indicated, there's some amount of confusion to them. I'm not going to cut through the confusion. I'm just going to try to describe some costs and some of the options that you have for compliance. You're going to see in my slides, I'm not going to talk about specific companies, but you'll see some labels. Rolf Jensen and Associates provides no endorsement for any particular product that may be suitable for your application. Also, you have to bear in mind that your building and jurisdiction are unique, so everyone's circumstance is going to be somewhat different. We're going to use it occasionally through this a term called authority having jurisdiction. I may shorten that to AHJ. That collectively means the agencies and groups that can regulate your life safety systems in your buildings. They can be from the state, county, city, and can be your brand standard, of course, too. So, and they will run collectively from absolutely helpful to being a hindrance. So we have so many different agencies within the country that it is a little bit difficult to predict what one to do over the other. I'm going to start with some specific discussion about some equipment. You have a couple options, and it will run from the simple to the more complex. Again, things are going to change by your building configuration. Particularly, what's important also is the location and separation of your CO sources. And think about as you walk through your building, where do you have a CO source? They can come from boilers, heating equipment, kitchens, pool heaters, and generators. There's any number of places in your building that may be a potential generator of CO. Any of your fuel-fired equipment. We do a lot of hotel projects, and we rarely see a building where there is at least some potential fireplace, for instance, where you're going to have some potential for CO generation. In an inadvertent situation. The simplest arrangement that you can likely find are single or multiple station alarms. These can be as simple as a battery-operated alarm, a plug-in alarm, hardwired backup with a battery, and our combination smoke alarms, CO alarms. Those last devices have become much more popular in the last few years at all levels of complexity. Kind of, if you would, killing two birds with one stone. But again, depending upon what your need is, at the basic alarm level, and when we talk about alarm, these are the simple standalone units, where in a limited capacity, they may be ganged together in multiple station alarms, fairly simple systems, standalone. They're not part of your fire alarm. So this is an option in the most basic of situations. What are some of the do's in this situation? Some of the key do's. Some of the things to look for. Most things in the world of fire protection and life safety have an underwriter's laboratory standard associated with it, and that certainly is the case with CO alarms. So the typical CO standalone or multiple station alarm that you'll see in a hotel is going to be approved to Underwriters Laboratory 2034. All the devices will be marked as such. The combination devices would also carry a listing or an approval for single and multiple station smoke alarms that will be UL 217. So these are things to look for as you're acquiring equipment and acquiring solutions. Are those things? We have had cases of counterfeit fire protection and life safety equipment in this country. Generally, if you're staying with the UL listed equipment, UL does a reasonably good job working individually and with folks like the Consumer Product Safety Commission to get the word out on counterfeit devices. Typically, in these smaller devices, these simpler devices, you're not going to do a formal review with your authority having jurisdiction or AHJ. I still recommend that you have a conversation. Again, your experience will differ widely across the country, but at least have a conversation and see if this is what is going to meet the requirements of the jurisdiction. If you're using a combination unit, also consider your smoke detection requirements. Smoke detectors are changing quite a bit. I don't have the time to get into a detailed discussion of some of the pending changes or potential changes, but we certainly are looking at a maximum life of about 10 years on a smoke detector. The battery quality, sound frequencies. It's a complicated subject that maybe we can have another webinar on at some point. But if you're looking at the combination units, factor in what your smoke detection requirements would be as well, and locate further manufacturers' requirements.
Welcome to WebEx. Please enter your access code or meeting number followed by the pound sign. Please enter your attendee ID number followed by the pound sign. If you do not know your attendee number, just press pound to continue. Welcome to WebEx. You will now be placed into the conference.
Step here. So if you're this far along the actual looking for manufacturers, and in this case also code requirements. Again, you'll be doing likely a formal submittal to the authority having jurisdiction. I want to comment on a question I get frequently, and certainly there's wireless technology that is out there in the marketplace. I describe it as an evolving technology right now, and it certainly shows a great deal of promise for the future. We do a significant number of hotel retrofits, fire alarm retrofits at RJA, and we've just recently used our first application of a wireless technology, and it was for carbon monoxide in a remote building, and it saved a good deal of money in terms of wiring, etc. But you've got that technology at both the multiple station level and at system detection, the larger fire alarm level. The point here is that this would not be something that your staff would do. This is likely where you are going to need to bring in a qualified contractor. But keep an eye on this, certainly an evolving technology. Some cost considerations, always very important, of course. I have three elements in my cost equation. Capital costs, and they can be something as simple as a single station or multiple station alarm. For CO, these are typically $40 to $80, depending upon what you want. Combination unit, maybe a little bit higher. Likely not a lot of expense after that. I'd say staff level work, if that's your solution. If you can make this work for your system. System style detection is going to be much higher, and again, likely part of a fire alarm modification upgrade. The second cost to consider is ongoing cost. You have a basic inspection of testing of units or systems. And then the maintenance. One key part of CO and system detection is every 5 to 10 years, depending on the manufacturer, you have to change out a sensing element. And the cost can be between $100 to $300, depending upon your manufacturer. So that has to be factored into your decision-making process. And then also the indirect cost of installation, business displacement, what's your staff effort going to be in this. We close with a don't be complacent. As Tom laid out, there's a good deal of confusion at the code level, so understand the extent of the work that you're going to require, understand the technical fix that you're going to need, and be realistic about the timing to achieve compliance. With that, I want to thank you. And I believe I'm going to turn this over to Stacy at this point.
Thank you, Byron. Our final speaker today is Stacy Welch. She is a licensed professional engineer and Senior Director of Fire Protection and Life Safety for Marriott International. Stacy holds a BS degree in Fire Protection Engineering from the University of Maryland and has over 15 years of experience in fire protection and life safety technology. She is a registered member of NFPA, FFPE, and ICC.
Great, thanks, Tony. And thank you for inviting me to participate. Great to be here and involved in this, getting this good information out. I'm going to provide kind of my perspective from the hotel side of things. So really just want to give you some background on what our experience has been. So I will go to the first slide here. Okay, so Marriott has been working in this realm for quite some time now. We really started looking at this in early 2000s when New Jersey and also Massachusetts rolled out their requirements and really brought the issue to the forefront because a lot of our hotels were being impacted by this. So we really started to pay particular attention to it. And then at the same time, there were incidents in hotels that kind of are ongoing, unfortunately, that really brought it to the forefront. So we developed the standard in 2002 and rolled that out to all of our properties, franchised and managed, as well as new properties and existing hotels in our portfolio, with a implementation date of June 2003 for them to have that work done. Our standard is similar to the new 2015 IBC requirements, which look for carbon monoxide alarms or detectors in rooms with fuel burning equipment and appliances, really focusing on the areas where the carbon monoxide could be produced rather than in other parts of the hotel. So for typical hotels, like Tom mentioned, this is really probably only a handful of places. I do want to mention, however, though, that some hotels are not going to be that simple as far as, for example, in our hotels, Residence Inns many times have fuel-fired gas heaters in every hotel room. So in those cases, they need CO detectors or alarms in every hotel room. So it really goes from about five alarms in a typical hotel to 130 or however many rooms there are. So it really can run the gamut just depending on what is located in your specific hotel. So for new construction or when a new fire alarm system gets installed, like a replacement, we're looking for carbon monoxide detectors. So these are detectors that are tied to the fire alarm system. Will obviously activate an alarm in the area where the CO is detected, as well as send a supervisory signal to the fire alarm control panel. In existing buildings, and this was primarily for when this rolled out in 2003, in existing buildings, we looked for the carbon monoxide alarms, which, as Byron said, those are the standalone detectors that can either be hardwired in or plugged in those areas. And then, of course, the local authority may have additional requirements. So whatever is more stringent is going to be what needs to be complied with. And in some cases, it's different things. So in those cases, there are multiple detectors in multiple areas. So again, just to reiterate, carbon monoxide alarms, as far as kind of what the vernacular is and what the local authority may refer to, alarms are those standalone detectors, or standalone alarms, I should say, that are independent of the fire alarm system, where detectors are part of a control panel and will report back in case of alarm. So a huge thing for any hotel manager or operator is really to do proper installation and maintenance. Of course, carbon monoxide, as you all know, is a colorless, tasteless, toxic gas which you can't detect other than with a detector or when people start having symptoms. So really important to kind of address things proactively. And as far as proper installation, of course, that would be done at time of construction, or if equipment is replaced, you want to be sure to use a licensed, qualified installer. And then ongoing maintenance of that equipment is critical so that it keeps running properly and is checked by someone who's qualified to do that. The manufacturer for that equipment will have guidelines on exactly how the equipment should be installed, as well as what kind of maintenance should be done on it. So that's really important. And then, of course, if there are any deficiencies that come up, those should be addressed immediately. Again, probably you all have heard about the horrible incident in Boone, North Carolina at the Best Western, where there were deaths at different times in the same room because the equipment wasn't repaired in a timely manner, and that led to an indictment, which is really unusual, but something really critical to keep aware of and really to address as soon as you're aware of anything. And then just one last note on that, it's really important to have your staff or associates be aware of what the symptoms are, so that when they start to hear of people complaining of flu-like symptoms, headache, nausea, sleepiness, that they're kind of aware of that, especially if it's in the same proximity. And that's for both hotel guests and associates, where they may be working in a laundry room and everyone starts to feel awful. That should really raise some red flags for people. And then on the next slide, I'm going to wrap up with this, but kind of what to do if your carbon monoxide detector is going off. Really want to address that right away. If it's in a room where people are working, say the laundry room or kitchen, and the detector goes off, have your staff turn the equipment off that they're working on right there, if they can do so, if they're still well enough to do that. The CO detectors should activate activate well before symptoms are felt by people. They're very sensitive, so hopefully they can turn off that equipment before they leave the space and ventilate the area by opening the doors and windows. If anyone is experiencing symptoms, you should call the fire department and evacuate the building. Critical to do that. They'll come in and determine if it is in fact carbon monoxide. And if it is, then obviously that equipment or appliance needs to be serviced by a qualified technician so that the issue can get resolved and the operation can continue. So that's really it for my piece. I'm going to hand it back over to Tony for question and answer.
Thank you, Stacey. At this point, we're going to open the conference for a Q&A section. We already have a few questions here, one from Ed. We are in the process of upgrading to add CO detectors at the main kitchen, loading dock, entrance to the building, and parking garage, which is directly attached to the building. Can someone speak to this? So I guess his question is if there's a current code requirement or fire inspection. He also follows up with eventually these upgrades will be addressable, installed by Johnson Controls, and tied into the fire panel. So Byron, would you shed some light on that?
Sure, Tony. This is a case where Ed is clearly using the fire alarm system to meet some CO requirements. It sounds like a fairly sophisticated upgrade, likely to be reviewed by the authority having jurisdiction, whoever that might be. So once you have equipment in the building, I'm not sure I understand completely the question, but once you have equipment in the building, as Stacey alluded to, there's an ongoing requirement for inspection, whether it's in a code or not. Once you have a piece of life safety equipment in the building, if you don't have a specific code requirement, I think it's prudent to turn to the manufacturer and understand from that organization what their recommendations are for ongoing testing and inspection. I see that from Ed. You're in Baltimore City. So Baltimore City, state of Maryland, yes, you would have ongoing inspection requirements. But more generally, to any jurisdiction, it's the obligation of a prudent owner to maintain the system in place. So strongly recommend that you have a qualified contractor once the installation is done, assuming the installation is done to code and to plan on a regular basis, meet the requirements of the manufacturer or an applicable NFPA standard on ongoing inspection, testing, and maintenance.
Tony, Tom Daly here. Just one item on that list of places where the detectors are going to be placed. With respect to the parking garage, the IFC and most of the codes that I'm familiar with, if the parking garage is open air or mechanically ventilated, there's normally no requirement for CO alarms in a general open area coverage type arrangement. So I would double check that with the fire marshal or authority having jurisdiction, because if the parking garage is large, that could be more devices than you would install anywhere else in the hotel.
Yeah. Jody, this is Byron. If I could make a point, maybe a general point, that we want to draw a distinction between smoke detection and CO detection and the incident we're trying to monitor. The fire is a fairly rapid incident, places people in jeopardy in a very short period of time. CO is generally much longer term. If you think of seconds and minutes for a smoke detection, and probably more minutes and hours, if not longer, for a CO incident. So we have different sounds that these devices make. So they're two really different incidents. As Tom pointed out, if you've got an open air parking garage, you probably could detect some carbon monoxide in there, given enough cars running. But is that a safety issue, or is it a threat to life? Probably not. So they're two different incidents that we're really dealing with: smoke versus carbon monoxide.
Great, thank you, Byron. We do have another question here from Eli. And it's the following: who will be inspecting these detectors? And Tom, if you would like to participate in this question.
Yeah, sure. If If it's a CO detector that's part of a CO system or part of a fire alarm system, then your typical inspection would be from the fire marshal or other authority having jurisdiction. If these are independent CO alarms, then there's an obligation for the owner, or probably in most cases the management company, to do an inspection just as you would do an inspection for a smoke alarm in a guest room.
And this is Stacy. I would just add as well, it's really important to look at the manufacturer's guidelines if it's going to be the hotel, to see how those detectors are tested. Sometimes it gets kind of tricky. Some have test buttons, and that's real easy, and others will take canned carbon monoxide in a can that could be used to do that inspection. So really important to look at that information. And also, if you have an installer putting it in, talk to them about it as well.
Great, thank you, Stacy. I see that there's no additional questions, at least to what the screen tells us here, but you'll have the information available for our panelists. If in case you do not, feel free to send an email to AHLA, and we will make sure we forward those questions to our speakers. And again, we thank you very much for attending this webinar. On behalf of AHLA, we welcome you, and we want you to be on the next one. So at this time, this webinar is concluded and is closed. Thank you very much.